In 1990, a bizarre film came out titled Jacob's Ladder. It follows the events of one Jacob Singer, a Vietnam War veteran that comes home and starts to hallucinate very strange, fragmentary visions. He sets off to find answers. This is the film that inspired a series that I will be covering today and in the future. Today, I'll be covering the very first installment in the Silent Hill series, titled Silent Hill. Alright, so Silent Hill was released in 1999 in North America, February, and in Japan in March 1999, and in Europe in July 1999. So ladies and gentlemen, this was a game back then, time like this, where horror games were just starting to become more popular, such as Doom, Quake, and the most lookalike at the time was Resident Evil. And back then, horror wasn't a really popular thing, but it was definitely keeping up to the standards, such as today's horror games like Dead Space and Left 4 Dead, and just, stuff like that, basically. So in this video, we're going to tackle basically everything about the video game itself. So, Silent Hill. Basically, the gameplay, features, the locations, trivia, endings, and towards the end of the video, I'm going to give you my thoughts of what the Silent Hill series, basically my opinion of it today, and then share some of my stories as well, and the main beef of this game. Why is this game so good? Why is this title called one of the greatest horror games of all time, basically? So yeah, we're gonna delve right into this meat, starting off with the story. Alright, we're moving on to probably my favorite thing about this game are the creatures, the monsters. I freaking love these things. And the cool thing is, they're not here to be a nuisance to Harry. They're all here for a purpose of their own. They're a manifestation of Alessa's consciousness. So the first creature you'll come across is Grey Children, or the Grey Child. They're also known as Demon Children, and they're childlike, knife-wielding little bastards in Silent Hill. And here's a fact: the Grey Children are exclusive to the North American version of the game, but they do not appear in the European or Japanese version because of controversial reasons that in North America they were pretty similar to children, and it's kind of fucked up. So these little guys, they appear like childlike creatures with pale grayish green skin wielding knives. They have gap-like mouths and a series of slits where the eyes would be. So these guys, they're not as loud, but they definitely attack in pairs or groups of 3, and they're actually pretty tough to deal with if you're on a higher difficulty. The best thing to do with these guys is either use the pipe. Again, it has that little knockback effect that I like about it, or you can use the handgun or shotgun. These guys will stab you, and if they get close enough, they will grab you. But you can repeatedly tap the X button and wiggle the analog stick to get them off faster and lessen Harry's damage. So the symbolism behind these, they interpretate Alessa Gillespie's classmates as seen through her eyes that are distorted, disturbed, and they're reminders of the torment and ridicule they abused her with, such as scribbling "Go home" and "Drop dead" on her desk. Another monster you'll come across pretty early in the game is the Air Screamer, is these flying fucks. The first one you'll come across is one that bursts in the cafe window. There's actually pretty good setup when you're grabbing your stuff on the counter, and the camera will pan into the window and you'll see an Air Screamer flying around. So these guys appear to a dinosaur that's called a pteranodon. Its legs and torso are entirely covered by pale leathery skin, so its name is derived from the high-pitched screeching noises it makes when attacked or being attacked. Their main danger lies in their flying, their mobility. They can bite at Harry and they can slash him with their talons. They are pretty fragile creatures, although landing a blow with a melee weapon is like near impossible. Usually you want to carry some kind of firearm to dispatch of these guys. The way you can tell one is nearby is just listen for flapping or maybe even squawking, signs of their approach. If you damage them enough, they're gonna fly away. But then sometimes they will come back to get some sweet, sweet revenge. If you're in a tough situation, the most effective method is to run in almost like in zigzags, and you'll most likely confuse them and they'll just get lost. So the symbolism behind these guys is their manifestation of an illustration from Alyssa Gillespie's favorite books, The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which presumably depicted the dinosaur. So the next creature we're going to talk about is the Groener. These are these dog-like creatures. Very large, hairless, and they look pretty demonic and like rotting and shit. They have bloody mouths. They're pretty dead looking, basically. That's what they're like trying to look, is dead. Almost like revived of a dead dog. They're one of the more common enemies of the game. They are sensitive to sound and will react to a gunshot or Harry Mason running nearby. The weird thing is they only appear in outdoor areas. These guys attack on sight, or as soon as if Harry makes enough noise to draw their attention. They move fast, and they usually circle around Harry. They would jump onto Harry, deliver a bite, or lunging full force at Harry. Due to their size, hitting them with a melee weapon can be challenging. If you can time it just right with a pipe, they're pretty easy to take down, but only if you're just facing against one. You don't really want to come across packs, they're pretty deadly. So the symbolism behind these guys is that Alyssa Gillespie has a strong dislike for dogs. She was usually frightened by barking dogs as a child and grew to fear them in general. So the creeper you'll first come across in the school. Then they're basically these big-ass critters that they move pretty fast and they react strongly to light. So these guys, they attack Harry Mason by nipping at their ankles, you know, literally biting your foot, his feet. Their small size and flat bodies make them difficult targets. However, you can literally stomp on them to kill them because they're pretty easy to get at. You know, even if you just have a handgun and quickly shoot him, then just dispatch him like that. So, but they are pretty annoying in higher difficulties, and it's best if you dispatch him like that. So the symbolism behind these guys, they represent Alyssa Gillespie's dislike of insects, with the exception of butterflies. Alright, so we're getting into the bosses in this game, the big baddies. The first one you'll come across is at the end of the school segment is the Splithead. This big beast that looks so intimidating. It can literally kill you in a single bite if you're not careful. So this guy literally resembles a lizard, although its head is only extremely obscure facial features, almost making it impossible to discern the parts of its face. It walks pretty slow with its forelegs, especially when turning, although they're pretty big, they can cover a lot more ground. And the split head has the ability to open up its head, or mouth, whatever you want to call it. And it may seem toothless, but has extremely powerful jaws that can literally kill Harry in one hit, in one bite, basically. So actually this thing is heavily foreshadowed before you come across it in a classroom. There's this fairy tale book saying this. Too lazy to say it, just that. But it basically just shows how to kill it. So basically its weak point is inside of his mouth, but the bees won't expose it at first, only attacking with a powerful headbutt. So the best thing you would do is that you would use a handgun or the shotgun until it stops and hisses, and its head will faintly pull apart and compress again rhythmically. Now the shotgun is your best buddy after this, and you must wait for the splithead's mouth to gape open and shoot. And the best way to do this is use the controls, use the down on the D-pad and pressing square to jump back or just walk back basically, because you have to time it just right. So the symbolism behind this creature is it's basically the hellish incarnation and transfiguration of a great lizard that appears in a fairy tale from the elementary school. So, the next creature is probably my favorite and the one that I'm most afraid of. It's called a Romper. This fucking scary thing is just so creepy in a way that I'll explain later. This guy is a powerful ape-like monster that attacks with a body blow and pins down its victim. These monsters leap or romp around at high speeds while laughing or grunting dementedly, making them hard to avoid. Those are literally reasons why I hate these things, but I also love them at the same time. Just like, they're probably the most intimidating out of all the creatures in this game, because they're actually pretty powerful on higher difficulties, because if they pin you, you're gonna lose a lot of health. These guys appear to be humanoid with a primitive physique. They're pretty muscular, have longer front arms, suggesting it's supposed to be human in nature. So the best thing to do is to avoid them, as these guys are capable of easily outrunning or out-romping Harry Mason and trampling him, inflicting much more damage, especially if one is to bite at his throat. If necessary, use the shotgun and rifle, but if you have a pistol, then that's fine too. You just gotta time it right so they won't tackle you to the fucking ground. Never use melee against these guys. It's possible, but it's just really hard, because they can literally jump on Harry before you can get a swing in. If you're in a sticky situation during the dark Silent Hill segment, you can turn off your flashlight and you can literally just run, beside them, and you won't even do anything because they're attracted to light, basically. If you're being pursued by one or two, running in a zigzag left and right will confuse them and they'll keep them at bay. Because if you're running a straight line, they can literally catch you and grapple you to the ground. If one actually gets onto you on the ground, repeatedly tap the X button and wiggle the analog stick will get them off faster and lessen Harry's damage. So the symbolism behind these guys is Alessa Gillespie's fear of adults and her dislike of people older than herself, because that's what the Order did to her. So the reason why I hate these things is that literally what I explained, but it's just that they romp. It's even I guess running will actually be pretty scary, but these guys romp. They literally don't walk, they don't run. They jump towards you and they make really disturbing sounds and groans. It's just I just really freaking love these guys. They're so cool. They have a charm to them, even when one gets on you. Damn, I'm gonna die, but it's so cool. So towards the middle half of the game, at the hospital you will come across puppet nurses and puppet doctors. I'm going to talk about the nurses first, and then I'm going to tackle the doctors. So these nurses, the most notable thing is that they have these parasites on their back. Literally controls them. It causes them to hunch forward when they walk. So these nurses wield scalpels as weapons, literally tools of a doctor. They wander the hospital in sluggish, slow movements, all while voicing groans. They sometimes cooperate, sometimes they talk. That's what I like about them, is that they're literally affected by a parasite. They're trapped in their minds, but the parasite is controlling them, which is kind of scary, actually. They can grapple Harry Mason while another one stabs him, and that's pretty dangerous if you're on hard difficulty or maybe even normal, because they can take a lot of health from you. You can avoid the nurses by turning off the flashlight. You can sneak by them undetected. You can either utilize the handgun or the hammer, since 1 to 2 hits or 3 on hardboard from the ladder should defeat them. If a nurse grabs Harry, immediately press X or square before another nurse stabs Harry. If done correctly, Harry can actually push both of them away simultaneously, giving them to attack. If done correctly, this tactic is useful since Harry won't take any damage if grabbed. So there's 3 types of nurses. There's a Type A, Type B, and a Type C. The Type A is the weakest, only having 400 points of health, but the Type C has the most health at least 800 points. So the symbolism behind the nurses is that they symbolize the cult's control over others. And the parasite could also represent Alessa's feeling toward God within her, or may yet be products of God attacking the town people. So with the puppet doctor, they're basically the same as the puppet nurses, but they have a bit more health than a Type A nurse, but there's only one type of puppet doctor. So, the Twin Feeler is the second boss that you'll come across in the Silent Hill town center, or the mall basically. So the Twin Feeler appears to be an oversized moth larva with purple colored blood. This will turn into another monster that I will talk about. So there's a couple ways you can, well actually there's probably only one way. The way that which I defeat it is that there's a rifle in the same room you can take it. Best thing to do is to make use advantage of the L1 and R1 controls while using the D-pad, the left or right D-pads. It can make Harry run sideways, you can run left or right. When Twin Feeler attacks on the ground, it burrows underground and then it gives you an attack. You will miss its attack. It's capable of spewing harmful green liquid, perhaps acid, and it can also attack by burying itself in the sand and bursting out in an attempt to strike Harry. After it takes enough damage, it apparently curls up and dies, an animalistic survival trait that appears in multiple species of fauna. Shortly after, the Twin Feeler springs back to life and escapes the arena by crashing through a wall and inadvertently making up Harry's own escape. So the symbolism behind this monster boss is that Alessa had a number of insect specimens in her room. These included butterflies and moths. The twin feel his presence is unlikely to be a result of a fear of insects, but rather an infatuation that carries over into Alessa's world. Another enemy you'll come across in old Silent Hill is called the Wormhead. They are stronger and more dementing looking versions of the Groener. Its body greatly resembles the Groener. It is hairless and has dull, rotting brown skin. It looks like it has more mass, it has worms all over its head, and it just looks daunting. The basically upgraded versions of the Groener transforms into a more grotesque and powerful creature. They basically have the same abilities and weaknesses as the Groeners, but they are very fast and sensitive to sounds, such as Harry Mason's footsteps or a gunshot. The symbolism behind this is that they exhibit the effects of the shift to the other world, showing the deforming power of Alessa's nightmare. So the next creature during Dark World version of Silent Hill, you'll come across the Night Flutter. It's a stronger variation of the Air Screamer. Night Flutter is basically similar to the Air Screamer, although, like the Wormhead, its head has been replaced with a solid mass of worms. Its body is more humanoid in shape, the aerial beast is also darker. It even sounds more, the sounds it makes sounds much more rugged and demonic. It basically behaves like an Air Screamer, but it's more vicious and relentless than its Fog World counterpart. It can take a fair amount of damage before going down. The main danger of the Night Flutter is its versatility and ability to move much faster than Harry Mason can. Fighting one can be difficult, as several Grandmasters will also pursue Harry while combating the Night Flutter. The best thing to do is flee. If you have to, you can take it out with a shotgun or maybe even a rifle. The handgun will just work as well. But the symbolism behind these guys is that the Wormhead may symbolize Alessa Gillespie's disgust for worms and the like. They also could symbolize change, particularly the change that the other world brings.